Have you ever wanted to destroy someone, not with violence, not with anger, but with silence so powerful it breaks them from the inside out? Because real power doesn't scream. It doesn't lash out or seek revenge. It watches, it waits. And when the time is right, it moves with such quiet certainty that the enemy doesn't even realize they've lost until it's over. That's how those who understand true control operate, not through drama, but through calm dominance. You don't need to fight fire with fire when you've learned to smother the flame without ever lifting a finger. You've been taught to defend yourself, to speak up, to strike back. But what if I told you that every reaction you give to someone trying to hurt you only makes them stronger? That by responding, by explaining, by trying to be understood, you're actually giving away your power? The truth is, the moment you start playing by their rules, you've already lost, because they're not playing for truth, they're playing for control. And if they can get under your skin, if they can provoke a response, they win. But the most dangerous person is the one who simply refuses to engage, who doesn't need to prove anything, who stays calm while others burn with insecurity. This is the art of silent destruction. The strategy of taking away what your enemy needs most, your energy, your attention, your emotional reaction. That's what they're addicted to. That's how they survive. And when you remove it, they're left exposed, confused, powerless. Think about that. Think about what it would mean to walk through chaos completely untouched, to watch your enemy's panic lash out, fall apart, while you remain still, centered, and unshaken. That's not weakness. That's control at its highest form. And it's something very few ever master. If you've ever felt powerless, ever been attacked, manipulated, or disrespected, then this message is for you. Because you don't have to fight back to win. You don't have to scream to be heard. What you need is strategy, precision, patience. You need to understand that the battlefield isn't out there. It's in the mind. And the moment you stop letting people pull your strings, you become untouchable. That's where your freedom lives. In emotional independence and your ability to not react no matter how loud the world gets. That's what breaks people more than any weapon ever could. So stay with me, because what you'll learn in the next few minutes will change the way you deal with enemies forever. You're going to discover how to reverse the power dynamic, how to take back control without ever appearing aggressive. You'll learn how to make people fear losing your attention more than gaining your approval. This is not just about protection. It's about dominance through discipline. And when you master that, you'll never need to raise your voice again, because your silence will do the damage. The moment you stop feeding their ego, you start starving their power. It's that simple. People who try to control you, humiliate you, or belittle you are always feeding on one thing: your reaction, your anger, your frustration, your attempts to explain yourself. That's what gives them oxygen. It makes them feel important, powerful, relevant. But when you go silent, when you respond with nothing, when your energy stays grounded, they start to choke. Their whole game depends on pulling you into their drama, forcing you into a role where they can play the hero, the victim, or the puppet master. But if you refuse to play, their entire illusion collapses, and you don't even need to lift a finger. Every time you defend yourself to someone who's already made up their mind about you, you give them your energy. Every time you argue with someone committed to misunderstanding you, you lose. Not because you're wrong, but because you gave them what they were starving for, your attention. Starve them. Let their words echo in empty space. Let their games fall flat without a willing participant, because that kind of destruction leaves no fingerprints, just clarity, just consequences. This is the mindset of someone who owns their space, who doesn't need to fight to be right, who doesn't lower themselves to defend against lies crafted by the insecure. You don't prove who you are through argument. You prove it through presence, through unshakable calm, through the confidence that truth always outlives deception. That's why you must rise above the urge to react. Let their noise echo into silence. Let their games fall apart without a player. And while they exhaust themselves trying to maintain the lie, you build your future in peace, untouched by their chaos. Because nothing is more powerful than the person who lets the truth reveal itself without ever having to speak. You win the game of power not by reacting to others, but by making them react to you. When you control your emotions, your energy becomes magnetic. People can't figure you out. They don't know what you're thinking, what you're planning, or what moves you'll make next. That confusion is your advantage. It creates tension. It forces them to chase clarity. And every time they lean in trying to read you, you've already taken control. Because the person who stays calm when others lose their composure controls the direction of every interaction. Not through force, but through presence. Most people give themselves away too easily. They talk too much. They explain too much. They reveal their intentions, their insecurities, their fears. And with every word, they hand over a piece of their power. But when you withhold, when you keep your plans hidden, when you stop explaining yourself, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability creates fear. Not because you're aggressive, but because no one knows how to prepare for you. That fear works in your favor. It forces people to think twice before crossing you. It makes them doubt their own position. And in that doubt, they hesitate. That's where your leverage lives. Power is not in being loud. It's in being unreadable, in becoming a mystery no one can solve. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them create their own stories. You don't owe anyone your thoughts. You don't owe anyone access to your inner world that belongs to you. And when you keep that locked, you become a fortress. Silent, strong, untouchable. The kind of person that shifts the atmosphere without saying a word. Because mystery draws attention. And attention, when managed correctly, becomes influence. This is how you destroy without ever attacking. You become so composed, so still, so self-controlled that others crumble just trying to figure you out. You make them overthink. You make them question themselves, and the more they spiral internally, the more power you gain externally. Because in every exchange, it's not the words that decide who wins, it's the control over energy, attention, and emotion. When you don't flinch, don't explain, don't react, you force the world to adjust to you. Understand this deeply. Power is not about domination. It's about gravity. The more control you have over yourself, the more pull you have on others. People are drawn to what they can't quite grasp. They follow those who move with certainty. They respect those who don't chase validation. So become that. Become the person who says less and watches more, who responds only when necessary, who sees everything and reveals nothing. Because in a world full of noise, your silence becomes sacred. Your presence becomes pressure. And the more silent strength you radiate, the more others feel it and break under it. Not because you attacked them, but because you mastered yourself so completely, they couldn't withstand it. Silence backed by strength becomes a language louder than any insult ever spoken. When your energy communicates confidence, when your eyes don't flicker, when your body stays still while others try to provoke chaos, you become the standard. You stop being just another person, they start measuring themselves against you. And that shift is everything, because the one who sets the tone controls the outcome. The moment you start moving with self-assurance that doesn't need approval, you rise above the noise. You turn the tables without raising your voice, without firing back. They begin to orbit around your calm, trying to crack it, trying to shake it, and failing. They won't admit it, but your composure threatens their entire identity. Most people survive off reactions. They use manipulation, fake kindness, or intimidation to control the emotional temperature of a room. But when you become the one who decides how the room feels, when you don't respond to their bait, when your expression doesn't shift even slightly, they lose control. People addicted to control cannot handle that kind of stillness. They unravel not because you've done anything, but because you've done nothing. That is your advantage. Your refusal to play their game forces them to play yours. And they'll lose. Every time. You must understand, dominance isn't about aggression. It's about ownership of your time, your energy, your attention. When you give those things away freely, anyone can control you. You no longer chase clarity from those who twist the truth. You no longer explain yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You become the mystery, and people fear what they can't read, what they can't predict, what they can't manipulate. That fear becomes your shield. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them exhaust themselves trying to break you. Because while they're busy trying to shake your foundation, you'll be building something they'll never touch. Mental discipline. Emotional control. The kind of self-respect that doesn't need an audience to exist. This is the essence of true power. You are not trying to win arguments. You are trying to win freedom from chaos, from emotional hijacking, from being controlled by weak minds and loud voices. You don't become powerful by overpowering others. You become powerful by becoming immune to their influence. The world trains you to react, to prove, to explain, but those are chains dressed as responsibility. Cut them. Stop explaining yourself to those who do not matter. Stop giving attention to the noise. Walk in silence with intention. Move with clarity that speaks louder than words. You owe no one access to your peace, and when you finally realize that, when you choose stillness over reaction, composure over chaos, purpose over noise, you'll see how little it takes to dismantle someone's illusion, not with hate, not with attack, but with pure, unshakable presence. That's the real destruction. That's the kind they never see coming. There is no need to crush your enemies when you can outgrow them. The most devastating response to disrespect, betrayal, or manipulation isn't revenge, it's transformation. It's becoming so elevated, so grounded, so untouchable that they can no longer reach you. That's the move that destroys without confrontation. Because the person who evolves beyond the petty games of others strips them of all relevance. You don't just rise, you erase them from the equation. Not through spite, but through progress. The most humiliating thing you can do to someone who tried to break you is to become everything they said you couldn't. Calmly, quietly, relentlessly, they expect you to stay angry. They expect you to spiral. They want to believe they still have space in your mind, control over your emotions, influence over your direction. But when your focus shifts inward, when your actions stop orbiting around them, their power dissolves. Their importance vanishes. You don't attack, you ascend. You become a new standard. They're left watching from below, confused, bitter, irrelevant. That's how you win in silence. You stop proving, stop defending, stop reacting, and you start building. Building discipline, vision, power, and with every move forward, you make their existence smaller, their games more obvious, their tactics more pitiful. You must stop asking for justice from people too broken to give it. Stop expecting apologies from those too proud to admit fault. Stop hoping for closure from minds too weak to face the truth. Closure is not something they can give you. It's something you give yourself the moment you decide they no longer define your story. Their actions, their opinions, their lies, they only have weight if you carry them. Put them down. Walk away with nothing but your own integrity. That's the only weapon you need, because when you rise without vengeance, you rise clean, and clean power lasts. You don't need to burn bridges. You just need to stop crossing them. Let them wonder what changed. Let them talk to the silence. Let them chase ghosts of a version of you that no longer exists. You're not who you were. And that truth alone is fatal to those who thrived off your weakness. Your indifference cuts deeper than any retaliation ever could, because it proves they no longer matter, not even enough to hate. You destroy when you shift from reaction to redirection, when you stop investing energy in battles you've already outgrown. That's when you become dangerous, not because you're aggressive, but because you're focused, quiet, evolving. You're no longer here to prove your strength, you're here to build it. Not to seek validation, but to live in such a way that your existence becomes undeniable. Let others stay trapped in the same loops. Let them talk, scheme, try to pull you back. But you, keep moving forward so ruthlessly that they can't follow. Let your growth do the destruction. Let your elevation be the final blow. The person who cannot control their emotions will always be ruled by those who can. That is the hidden structure behind every power dynamic. Emotional discipline isn't just a trait. It's a weapon. The calmer you stay, the more chaos you command. When you master the ability to remain composed while others unravel, you stop being manipulated by their energy and start dictating the rhythm of every room you enter. Most people are puppets to their impulses. They react, they panic, they lash out. If you can remain still, if you can observe without absorbing, if you can feel without acting, you become untouchable. Because the world cannot control a person who controls themselves, this is where your transformation becomes irreversible. When your emotions are no longer up for grabs, no one can bait you into their games. They can insult you, lie about you, try to provoke you, but you don't flinch, you don't explain, you don't try to convince anyone of the truth. You stay still, grounded in self-respect, anchored in silence. That silence becomes power. It says everything words cannot. It commands without noise. Because true authority doesn't need to yell. It simply exists, and people feel it. You no longer fight fire with fire. With fire, you smother it with ice-cold presence, unshaken. controlled, intentional. Weak minds fear silence because they don't understand it. They assume it means weakness. They assume it means surrender. But silence is strategic. It reveals more than arguments ever could. It shows you don't need the crowd to stand firm. It shows you don't need approval to feel confident. And that realization is lethal to manipulators, liars, and narcissists because their strength comes from your reaction. Starve them of it and they fade. Deny them your emotional energy and they shrink. You're not feeding their games anymore. You've risen above them. That's what power looks like. It's not loud, it's not reckless, and it's never desperate. It's calm, calculated. It holds back more than it reveals. And when you start living this way, people notice. They adjust their tone around you. They hesitate before crossing you.